All right, let's take a look at some of the cool stuff you can do with Metadata Studio. Metadata Studio is a prompt engineering product for Snapshot, and it lets admins and developers build really amazing prompts that they can share with all of the other people in their org. This is a cool one, create flow descriptions. So what you can do is, when you submit the prompt, it will ask you to select a flow, and then the artificial assistant will document that flow. So just like that, you can see here's the answer that has now descriptions in all of the available locations where a flow can have a description, and the descriptions are generated by artificial intelligence, and then you can validate the flow against your org by doing a test deployment. And there were no errors reported. And now we can either export that asset as a file for Salesforce DX or deploy it to our org to actually add the descriptions to that flow. All right, here's another cool thing you can do with Metadata Studio. Let's create an Apex trigger and class from a flow. Now this will guide you to select a record triggered flow and examine everything that it does, and then create a matching trigger and class that does the same thing. What we can do is submit the prompt and select a record trigger flow that we're interested in, and our artificial agent will help us design a trigger that matches and a class that matches. Once again, you can validate that against your org and see that there are no errors, and then you can either deploy it or save it as a file. All right, one more thing. This is an interesting prompt that lets you create a custom object just by describing it. And what we have here is a few shot learning example. So we have an example question and then an example answer. And this guides the intelligent assistant to provide exactly the right type of object for your org. But let me show you some of the engineering behind this. Let's go to Prompt Studio and let's delete the example question and delete the example answer. And so now we're going to create a custom object with no previous learning. And let's submit that prompt. So I can describe the custom object here any way I want to describe it, and the intelligent assistant will build a custom object. Let's validate it. So when we validate it, we find some problems. They're using the wrong version of the API, a couple other things. So let's create a message and go back to the intelligent assistant and say, the asset you created could not be deployed. Here are the errors. Please fix it. Now let's submit the prompt again. And our assistant tells us apologies for the errors in the previous XML. Here is a new object with the correct metadata version and other information. So you can actually conduct a conversation with the assistant that's supercharged with both Salesforce data and error messages, and then you can validate the things that are created against your org and save them. All right, that's Metadata Studio.